Hello, second grade Smarties, and welcome to Wit and Wisdom Module 2, Lesson 7. So we are going to go ahead and get started by talking about our pizza bite question for today, and that is, what is happening in Plains Indians? So as we get started to talk about our main topic and our main points, which we will get to in a little bit, I want us to take a look at our table of contents. I'm going to read the sections and I want you to think about, what do all of these sections headings have in common? Who were the first people in North America? What are the Great Plains? Who are the Indians of the Great Plains? What animals did early Plains Indians need? What did early Plains Indians farm? What were early Plains Indians communities like? How were early Plains Indians tribes organized? What objects did early Plains Indians create? What did early Plains Indians believe? And how did contact with non-Indians affect Plains Indians? What is modern life like for Plains Indians? In the Ed Puzzle, I want you to tell me, what did all of those sections talk about? Tell me in the Ed Puzzle. They all talk about Plains Indians, right? Because what is our book title called? Plains Indians. So if we are reading a book about Plains Indians, all of our information needs to be about Plains Indians. So today we're going to be exploring some text features that we can find in informational books to help us understand our topic. But before we do that, we have one final section that we need to read from our book. This is the final 8 pages of the book, and it talks about how did contact with non-Indians affect Plains Indians. We talked about this a lot in the Buffalo Are Back. We talked about the early American settlers and the early American government breaking treaties. So this is going to give us more information about that. The Spanish explorer Francisco Vázquez de Coronado came to the plains of Kansas in 1541. He reported meeting Indians in skin tents who hunted wild cows. He was the first European to meet Plains Indians and to see their teepees and the bison they hunted. Spanish, French, and later U.S. traders came to the Great Plains in search of valuable bison hides. The Indians acquired guns from these traders. This made them more effective hunters and more fearsome warriors. Tragically, white traders also brought with them smallpox and other diseases. This took a terrible toll on Plains Indians. Thousands of Plains Indians died of such diseases, and some entire tribes were wiped out. Settlers move west. As the United States expanded westward in the late 1800s, non-Indian settlers began to move across the Great Plains. Trails and railroads began to stretch across the Great Plains all the way to California. At the same time, non-Indian hunters trying to sell bison hides for profit slaughtered the animals by the hundreds and thousands. Bison nearly died out in the 1800s. Farmers and ranchers looking for land set their sights on the Great Plains. Even though Indians considered the Great Plains their home, settlers saw the land as open country that they could simply take. War for the Great Plains. In the mid-1800s, the U.S. government tried to force Plains Indians to move to reservations. Reservations were public lands set aside as homelands for Indians. On reservations, the Plains Indians would have to give up many of their traditional ways of life and depend on the government for support. Plains Indians fought back. In 1876, thousands of Lakota, Sioux, and Cheyenne warriors wiped out a force of U.S. soldiers led by General George Custer near the Little Bighorn River in Montana. Custer's defeat only made the United States more determined to conquer the Plains Indians. Reservations. The U.S. Army began to capture bands of Plains Indians. By the 1880s, the last of the Plains Indians had been confined to reservations. The US government promised Indians that they would take care of them on the reservations, but too often Plains Indians found only poverty and sickness. Some turned to a new movement called the ghost dance religion, which taught that a sacred dance would restore the bison and force non Indian settlers to leave. Some Lakota Sioux participated in a ghost dance, clashed with U.S. soldiers at Wounded Knee, South Dakota in 1890. Over 150 Lakota were killed, and the ghost dance movement faded. The wars for the Great Plains were over. What is modern life like for Plains Indians? At the start of the 1900s, life on the reservations was harsh. People on reservations were very poor and had poor quality health care. Reforms brought some improvement. First, in 1924, the U.S. Congress passed the Indian Citizenship Act. This made all Indian citizens of the United States. The Indian Reorganization Act of 1934 tried to give Indians more control over their lives and allow them to practice traditional ceremonies. But some Plains reservations remained among the poorest places in the country. In 1968, Plains Indians played a leading part in forming the American Indian movement. This group fights for Indians' rights. In 1973, members of the AIM took over the village of Wounded Knee for 71 days. Their actions focused attention on the problems faced by American Indians. Plains Indians today. Today, Plains Indians live not only on reservations, but also in cities, suburbs, and small towns all across the United States and throughout the world. At tribal colleges, people can prepare for employment and learn about traditional ways. More and more Plains Indians are taking an interest in the languages and traditions of their people. At gatherings, they dress in colorful costumes and proudly perform traditional dances. By remembering their proud history, they prepare for successful futures. Biography. So here is a text feature. We have some more information. Billy Mills. Billy Mills, born in 1938, is an Oglala Lakota who was raised on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota. In 1964, he won the gold medal in the 10,000 meter race in the Olympics in Tokyo, Japan. He later helped found Running Strong for American Indian Youth, a group that helps young American Indians in need. And our final page has a timeline of important dates and the events that happen in those important dates. All right, so after reading those last few pages, what are some things that you noticed and wondered on those last pages? I noticed that it talked about the Indian Wars, right? It talked about the wars between the Plains Indians and the early American settlers. What is something you noticed? Maybe you noticed something about the government, how explorers called bison wild cows. What is something that you noticed? What is something that you wondered? I wondered, just like on this chart right here, why did the explorers call teepees skin tents? Where did the settlers come from? And then when it was talking about tribal colleges, this is a good wonder. Who teaches at tribal colleges? In the Ed Puzzle, I want you to tell me what is a wonder or a question that you had about these last few pages. All right, so we already discussed that this book is an informational book. It's a book that gives us information about a topic, and our topic is Plains Indians. In informational books, there are certain text features that help us understand the main topic. So in most, not all, but most informational books, we find a table of contents. Where is a table of contents in an informational book? Tell me in the Ed Puzzle. Is it at the beginning, the middle, or the end? It's at the beginning, right? So our table of contents is usually the first page that we see in our informational book that tells us where we can find these topics. So let's say I want to go to, What were early Plains Indian communities like? It tells me I can find out on page 22. So I'm going to page 22. And look, you guys are also on page 22. So another important text feature is headings. So a heading it tells us what you will learn about in this section of the book. So our heading is usually in bigger letters than our text, and it tells us what we're going to learn about. What were early Plains Indian communities like? So that is our heading. In informational books, you'll sometimes see maps too. In our book, do we have a map? Yes, we have a map that shows us the traditional tribal homelands of the Great Plains. So it shows us a map of what were the Great Plains. Informational books also give us timelines, not all the time, but sometimes. In a book, where might you find the timeline? At the beginning, middle, or end? At the end, because we looked at this just a second ago. The timeline gives us information from the whole book and tells us when that information happens. Informational books also have photo captions. So if you look at the photos on our page, you notice that there are sometimes sentences that are pointing to the picture. A caption is something that explains what is happening in that picture. So in this picture, it says large teepees might be made of as many 18 bison hides. So it was explaining what might be in this picture. The same thing on this page, the photo caption says, wood could be hard to find on the Great Plains, so people use sod and earth to build houses. So it explains what is happening in that picture. Something else that we find in most informational books are glossaries. Remember, glossaries are the pages at the beginning, middle, or end. At the end, that give us those vocabulary words. So those dark words that we see, like right there, so teepees, hides, and plains. So those darker words are vocabulary words that we can find the meaning of in the glossary. So where can you find the glossary? At the beginning, middle, or end? Tell me in the ed puzzle. We find the glossary at the end. So let's say on that page, it had the word hide. So in the glossary, I can find hide, and it tells me a hide is the skin of an animal. So the glossary gives us meaning of those darker colored words. And finally, something else that we would find is an index. And if you look closely at our index, it has words and it has numbers next to it. What do you think those numbers are for? The pages, right? So let's say, as I was reading the book and I finished it, I wanted to learn more about Christopher Columbus. So here's Columbus, started with his last name and his first name. It tells me I can find everything I need to know about Christopher Columbus on page 5. So I would use my book to go back to page 5. And then I can find where it talks about Christopher Columbus. When Italian explorer Christopher Columbus came to the Americas in 1492, he used the name Indios or Indians. So all of those text features help us do what? What do those text features help us with? Tell me in the ed puzzle. They help us understand the main topic that we are learning about. So as we are thinking about this book, and as we are thinking about the information in this book, let's explore one of the main topics that we learn about in this book. So it talks about the difference between Eastern and Western Plains Indians. So Plains Indians that lived in the East, it's east on my side, and Plains Indians that lived in the West. So let's listen to what it says about these Plains Indians and see if we can come up with understanding what is the difference between them. On the eastern Great Plains, more plentiful rainfall created conditions favorable for farming. So in the east, the Plains Indians farmed. Tribes in these areas raised crops such as corns, beans, and squash. Like tribes to the west, they also hunted buffalo, but they did not share the nomadic lifestyle of the Western Plains Indians. Because their farms provided much of what they needed to survive, they were able to live in villages for most of the year. So, talking about our Eastern Plains Indians, did they move a lot or did they stay in one place? They stayed in one place because they had farms. The Western Plains Indians had a nomadic lifestyle. So, nomadic means they move a lot. And when they moved a lot, what would they hunt? They would hunt bison. So, what is something that we could learn as the main topic for both of these groups of Native Americans? One group stayed in one place and farmed. The other group traveled from place to place and hunted. What would be the main topic? What do you think? Tell me in the puzzle. So, our main topic could be different tribes of Indians lived in different ways. So, not every Native American had farms, not every Native American tribe had a nomadic lifestyle. So, different tribes had different ways of life. So, different tribes did different things to survive. All right. So, as we are thinking about this important information, we are going to have a time where we do an informational writing. So, we are going to talk about points. And I know what you're thinking, Miss Mason. What are points? Why do I need to know what points are? So it's not like basketball points, it's not like soccer points that you get at a game. Points are those important details that support our topic statement. So when I say I need you to give me 3 points to tell me about Eastern Plains Indians, points are details from a book that tell us about Eastern Plains Indians. Okay, so let's say that you are having to write an informative paragraph and you are telling your friend about a new bike that you got. Okay, so you are about to describe your bike to your bestest best friend in a letter. Which of these points would be the most important points to tell your friend? What would be the most important information to tell your friend about your new bike? Would you tell them about how your bike came in a box? Would you tell them that your bike is red with black stripes? The bike has black tires. The bike has a sign that says safety first, wear a helmet. Or the bike has gears and handbrakes. There's 2 that I think would be the most important in telling your friend. What 2 points? So here's our points. We have 5 points. What 2 points do you think were the most important when describing your new bike? Tell me in the puzzle. If I were to tell my bestest best friend about a new bike that I got, I would tell my best friend what color my bike was because that's super important. So I would tell her that my bike is red with black stripes. Would I need to tell her that my bike has black tires? Probably not, because most bikes have black tires. Would I need to tell her about my safety sign? No, because she's not the one riding the bike. Would I tell her that my bike has gears and handbrakes? Maybe, because what if I have been riding a bike with training wheels and now I have a grown up bike that has those gears and handbrakes? So, friends, when we are writing in an informative paragraph, we want to give the most important information. So, let's say that I have a topic statement. Okay. And let's say my topic statement is Western Plains Indians were nomadic while Eastern Plains Indians were not. So that's our topic statement. I have two examples. It says two plans that has points. I want you to think, which plan has better information, plan 1 or plan 2? Okay, so listen and let's see if we can figure this out. Western Plains Indians were nomadic, while Eastern Plains Indians were not. Here's plan 1. The Assiniboine people lived in northern Montana. Comanche people got horses from Spanish explorers. Tribes in the east ate buffalo and plants. Did those points support about how Western Plains Indians were nomadic and how Eastern Plains Indians were not? Let's listen to plan 2. Western Plains Indians ate mostly buffalo. They followed the herds. More rain falls in the Eastern Plains so people could grow crops. Eastern Plains Indians lived mostly in farming villages. So which plan talked about where these Native Americans lived? Did plan 1 talk about the Western and Eastern Indians and where they lived, or did plan 2 talk about where these Indians live? Tell me in the puzzle. Plan 2 gave us more information about where the Western Plains Indians lived. It said that they followed herds because they mostly ate buffalo. And it told us that the Eastern Plains Indians stayed in farming villages. Plan 1 did not give us information about where these groups of people live. It told us that they lived in Montana, or that the tribes in the east ate buffalo, but it didn't tell us exactly where and why they lived where they did. So we want to make sure that we are being very specific in supporting our topic statement with those points. All right, and this should look very familiar because this was our timeline from the buffalo are back. If you notice, I added some new things to our timeline. So long time ago, we learned that people came to the Great Plains. So the Native Americans came to the Great Plains. We also learned on those last few pages that Plains Indians were forced into reservations, which caused the Indian Wars. And we also learned that the bison nearly died out from the early settlers. All right, so yesterday we did a deep dive with irregular plural nouns. Remember, irregular plural nouns are nouns that mean more than one, but are different or the same from the base word noun. So we have 3 sentences, and I want you to think which plural noun makes the most sense. Okay, the buffalo wobbled to his blank. The buffalo wobbled to his foots. The buffalo wobbled to his feet, or the buffalo wobbled to his feet. Which one would be the best choice? Tell me in the ed puzzle. The buffalo wobbled to his feet. Feet is irregular plural noun for more than one foot. All right, so feet went in our first sentence. Here's our next one. There are many different blank or groups of American Indians. There are many different tribe or groups of American Indians, or there are many different tribes or groups of American Indians. Which of these words tells me I have more than one? Tell me in the puzzle. So tribes, right? It even has groups later here, which tells us that we would need a plural noun. There are many different tribes or groups of American Indians. And here's our last one. Indian blank hunted and decided whether to go to war. So we have to decide which noun needs to go here. Indian man hunted and decided whether to go to war. Does that make sense? Indian men's hunted and decided whether to go to war. Or Indian men hunted and decided whether to go to war. Which of these words, talking about more than one man, makes the most sense? So you should have chosen men. Indian men hunted and decided whether to go to war. So if I have more than one man, it becomes men. All right, Smarties, that is it for lesson 7 with module 2, talking about the Plains Indians. As always, keep that growth mindset. Good learners do hard things, and I will see you tomorrow with another lesson. Bye, guys.